Hi, and welcome to Module 2 of Linking Literacy and Assessment. This week we will be working on making a plan for the assessment of the child that you'll be tutoring this semester. So what we do before we actually start tutoring the child is we need to see how much they know and what they need to know. So what we do for that is we do a developmental literacy assessment, which is one of your required texts for this class. So you have some pages that you're required to read this week, and as you're reading them, you'll be thinking about, does this test apply to the child I'm going to tutor or not? And you'll be making a plan to assess the specific child that you are tutoring. So this is actually different from your assessment chart. Your assessment chart, remember, is a general assessment chart. You're including every single assessment that we talk about, every test that we talk about. You can add to that chart this week. It won't be collected, but you do need to add to it. But this week, what you're turning in is a plan for assessment for the child you'll be tutoring. So when you write that, go ahead and make a brief description of the child, so I know the age and the grade. Perhaps if the child is an English language learner or has some other needs that would be appropriate for me to know about. Now, when you read this, you're going to see, I mean, it's really thick. There's lots of tests in here. So, of course, you're not going to be able to give every single one of these to the child that you're tutoring. They're not all going to be appropriate for the child that you're tutoring. So, what you need to do is think about which ones are appropriate for the child you're tutoring, and then you're going to be making a plan and an outline of what you'll be doing with the child. So that might look like a bulleted list of the things you're going to plan to do. It might look like a numbered list of what you're going to do. So you need to write down the materials you'll need to give this and everything you plan to do or say when you're giving these tests to the students, so that you can have an organized way of knowing what you plan to do with this child. You also need to make a note, and the developmental literacy inventory will tell you how to do that, but you need to make a note of when to stop giving a test, because if a child gets frustrated, it's time to stop. There's really no point in pushing a child beyond the frustration level and having them shut down and not be able to do any more of the tests with you. So the developmental literacy inventory will tell you, okay, if they miss 2 questions out of 5, that's frustration, we're going to stop. If they miss 5 out of 10, that's frustration, we're going to stop. So each test actually tells you how many they missed, and what level that is as far as frustration, independent, or instructional levels. So make sure you include that in your plan so you'll know. So make that a useful tool for yourself. It's not just an assignment for me to look at. It's a tool for you to use when you're working with the child. Then once you turn those in, I review those, give you some notes back and say, yes, this is appropriate, maybe it's not. And then, of course, you'll actually be giving all these different assessments to the child that you're tutoring. There are some assessments that may not be in here that you may have seen in Module 1 or some of the links of Module 2. They may be more appropriate for the child that you're tutoring. So think about if you want to give some of those tests as well. Maybe the dictation test might be one that you would want to give to a child, if depending on whether it's appropriate. So in this book, you'll see what happens is they'll have you give like a baseline test, and depending on how well the child does on it, you either move up or you move down. So you need to outline that when you're writing out your plan, so you know, okay, they passed this, they did great, flying colors, we're moving on to do a running record, or ooh, they really bombed, we're going to move down. And that's what you need to know in your plan for assessment. Otherwise, you're going to just be sitting here flipping through this thing and wasting time with your student, and we don't want that. This is mostly written in, paragraph form, so it's not quite written is easy to follow as like a plan for instruction would be, that you're writing out, because of course it includes a lot more detail. So read it. I'd read it a few times, honestly, before I gave the test to a child, because you want to be on point when you're doing that. Um, so that's what you have for this week to do. You have a plan for assessment. Of course, you'll also be adding to your assessment chart, but that's not due this week. We also have a discussion board, where you're talking about what informal assessments that you've read about in our course that you might want to go ahead and give in your classroom, that you see yourself being able to give. You could also write about, I see this assessment, I want to give it, I don't see how it's possible in the classroom. Who can help me think of ideas how to make this assessment work? So those are some things you can write about in the discussion. And then I also want to talk about our extra point activity. Last week we had 2 activities to do for the extra point, and some of you did those, so that's great, and you'll get your extra point. Now this week's extra point activity is actually going to be like a double purpose activity, because you have to do it anyway. So what it is for this week, for your extra point, please go into the ongoing tutoring discussion and get started there. Start writing about the child that you plan to tutor, and give us a little description of the child. Maybe you could ask us some questions that you may have about how to administer the test to your specific child, or maybe you can provide information to somebody else in ongoing tutoring discussion. So for an extra point this week, go into the ongoing tutoring discussion and give us a little description about your child, and maybe ask a question as it applies to this week's readings and the developmental literacy inventory. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to hearing what you have to say on the discussion board this week, and I look forward to seeing what you have in your assessment plans. Thanks.